Code Vein 2, the sequel to 2019's gothic anime-styled Souls-like, is here, and it's bigger and better in possibly every way. With only a couple of small missteps, this entry clearly solidifies Bandai Namco as serious players in the genre. And before anyone asks, no, you do not need to play the first Code Vein to enjoy this game. The stories are almost entirely separate. So with that out of the way, let's just jump straight into the story and characters and see how they land.
Do you think you can stand? There is someone that I'd very much like for you to meet.
The premise of Code Vein 2, while being as spoiler-free as possible, is that there's been a great calamity that destroyed the world. You play as a revenant hunter in this ruined future, and your goal is to go back in time to stop the heroes who ultimately caused the collapse. You do this with the help of a revenant, the name of the vampire-esque people in the world, who can let you travel back and forth from the past to the future. From there, you interact with the world, story, and characters across two different time settings. Unfortunately, the first few hours of the game are a complete slog, as the game throws a bunch of jargon words and terms at you, like it expects you to know what everything means, and the story does the same. Forma, Mistal, Blood Code, Resurgence, Revenants, and Revenant Hunters, who apparently don't hunt down and kill Revenants? All of these terms are introduced within the first 15 minutes with little to no explanation, and it feels frustrating, almost like playing the game in a different language. However, once you power through that initial stretch and start figuring out what these words actually mean, largely through experimentation, the game really begins to open up. Once you're off the tutorial island, the world expands, and almost immediately Code Vein 2 becomes an absolute joy to play. You travel around the world, jumping back and forth between the past and present to track down the heroes you're meant to stop, gathering allies and partners along the way. But the real heart of the story isn't the overarching plot, but the individual mini-stories of each of those heroes. As you seek them out, you learn who they are, what shaped them, and what ultimately led them down their paths. Often you even work alongside them in the past, uncovering their motivations firsthand and learning what happened to them before everything went wrong. Each of these heroes has a tragic story of their own, leaning heavily into these themes of pain, loss, suffering, and sacrifice. What makes this storytelling especially compelling is that you already know how things turn out because you've seen the future. The game then fills in the emotional gaps, letting you experience their tragedies alongside them. The characters are extremely well written, and many of these stories are genuinely moving. You become very attached to people you already know you're eventually meant to stop, which creates a really effective emotional tension. As the story progresses, you're given choices that affect both the past and the future, including decisions about who to save and who not to save. These choices result in noticeable, tangible changes, not just to the story, but the physical state of the world itself. Overall, the main story is fine. It's a bit tropey, very anime meets RPG save the world, and any deeper intricacies are mostly lost on me thanks to the overly convoluted terminology and unclear exposition. That said, the characters are absolutely top-notch, and they kept me fully engaged from the opening hours all the way through the final arc. Now let's talk about the part everyone comes to a Souls-like for, the combat. Simply put, it slaps. Combat in Code Vein 2 is incredibly fun and offers a huge amount of variety. There are 7 main weapon types to experiment with, ranging from traditional greatswords and dual blades to more unique ones like a bayonet rifle or psychic-controlled blades that feel somewhat reminiscent of Scarlet Nexus. I played around with most of the weapon types, and while I usually gravitate towards faster weapons with bleed builds or similar setups, I ended up absolutely loving the giant hammer in this game. Every hit delivers a visceral, crunchy impact, and it felt fantastic to use throughout my playthrough. The only real issue I had in combat, and this just might be a skill issue on my part, was the lock-on system. It often didn't target the enemy I wanted to, and switching between targets didn't always behave consistently. Compared to how fluid and polished the rest of the combat feels, the lock-on system came across as janky and unintuitive, especially during larger fights where the game otherwise encourages a near flow state once you understand the mechanics. Weapon choice isn't the only thing that defines your build though. You can equip up to 4 different skills and spells to each weapon, allowing for a lot of customization. For example, you might build a ranged bayonet setup that can still dive into combat with a flying stab, or in my case, a massive hammer build that can also cast lightning magic from a distance. These skills range from offensive spells to self buffs and even support abilities that enhance your companion, giving you a ton of freedom in how you approach combat. Speaking of companions, while the first Code Vein didn't technically have a difficulty setting, the real difficulty slider was which companion you chose to bring with you. Some were just a lot stronger than others. In Code Vein 2, every companion feels powerful in their own way, making for a much smoother experience overall, especially since certain story segments require specific companions. Each companion fights differently and offers unique benefits and buffs. While the combat is challenging, it does feel a bit easier than the original game and some other Souls-likes. Companions can also revive you if you die in combat, though each revival removes them from the fight for an increasingly long period of time. If you're looking for more challenge, you can always travel without a companion entirely. Doing so grants you a bit of extra attack power, but it's mainly there for players who want to crank up the difficulty. The sense of freedom carries directly into the world design, and it's excellent. Code Vein 2 shifts to an open world structure instead of the more linear zones and dungeons from the original game, and the change works incredibly well. It clearly takes inspiration from Elden Ring, and while the world isn't quite as densely packed, there's still a ton of cool stuff to find, places to explore, and secrets to uncover. One of the standout features from the original Code Vein was its verticality, especially the Cathedral of Sacred Blood, a zone that still burned into my memory almost 7 years later. That verticality is back, and it's used in even more interesting ways this time around. Early on, you'll explore the Sunken City, a ruined urban area filled with burnt out buildings, collapsing highways, and flooded roadways. You can leap between elevated highways to create new traversal paths, climb into buildings to explore interiors, and even use rooftops to move through the city and uncover hidden secrets. Code Vein 2 constantly encourages you to not only check every corner, but to look up and down as well, adding an extra layer to exploration that keeps it engaging throughout the game. Your choices in the past also reshape the future, sometimes unlocking entirely new areas to explore. And on top of that, you get a sweet motorcycle to travel around the world. It can even glide through the air for a limited period of time, opening up new traversal options and letting you reach otherwise inaccessible secret areas. There were only two real issues I had with exploration. The first were some unexplained time or story gates that would block my progression, only to vanish later without any clear explanation. The second was that occasionally, if I tried gliding with the motorcycle in a way the game didn't expect, it would suddenly disappear and kill me without warning. Not deal-breaking problems by any means, but definitely annoying in an otherwise fantastic world.
I'm sorry. Maintaining the link. It requires more energy than I thought.
Visually, Code Vein 2 might be a bit divisive. The art direction moves away slightly from the original's very anime the game aesthetic. While it's still very clearly anime inspired, it also pulls from older cel-shaded styles, giving some elements an almost plastic-like look. That's the negative take anyway. Personally, I think it looks great. The character designs are distinct, the color choices create strong contrast, and the visual identity makes each major set piece pop. There are also some fantastic effects tied to memories and time-shifted areas, where environments phase between physical and ethereal states in a way that's both striking and impressive. Every region, zone, and dungeon feels visually unique, and even within the same general area, it never feels like assets are being reused excessively. Performance-wise, I played it on PlayStation 5, and the game struggled at times to maintain a consistent 60 frames per second, even in performance mode. Frame drops were fairly common, with occasional dips to 30 frames per second, noticeable but not game-breaking. However, from the halfway point onward, there were a handful of moments where performance dipped below 15 frames per second for a few seconds at a time. This only happened 4 or 5 times in total, and I'm not sure whether it was due to my system, my specific playthrough, or later areas that simply aren't as well optimized, but it did happen. On the music side though, absolutely phenomenal. The opening theme, a swelling piano and orchestral track, immediately sets the tone for an epic emotional journey, and it delivers on that promise. Even standard open world encounters are accompanied by fantastic music, and the boss tracks in particular go incredibly hard. One of the heroes from the past, Holly, is a singer, and music plays a major role in her story. Her tracks are especially haunting and memorable. It's very clear that Bandai Namco's sound team was firing on all cylinders here. The soundtrack is stellar from start to finish. Overall, Code Vein 2 takes everything that made the original game special and cranks it up to 11. The combat is a major step forward, the characters are deeply emotional and memorable, and the open world is an absolute joy to explore. While the main story is slightly held back by convoluted terminology and unclear exposition early on, the pacing improves dramatically after the opening hours, and the character-driven storytelling carries the experience all the way to the end. This is a bigger, better evolution of Code Vein, and I sincerely hope Bandai Namco keeps this franchise going, because wherever they take it next, I'm absolutely along for that ride. Now, this is one of the first big JRPG releases for 2026, but to see the best JRPGs from 2025 you need to play, make sure you watch this video next.